The city is quiet before it wakes. A soft haze drapes itself over rooftops and empty streets, muffling the noise of what's to come. Through the window, the world appears faded, like someone turned the brightness down on life itself. You're sitting still, not because you want to be still, but because moving feels heavier than usual. You've woken up, yes, but your heart hasn't quite joined you yet. This isn't laziness. This isn't weakness. This is the weight of holding everything together, quietly, for far too long. And in that stillness, there's a question sitting with you. How much longer can I do this? Maybe you're here because that question has grown louder, because the ache inside you isn't going away, because even when you're surrounded by people, you still feel like you're disappearing. If that's where you are today, you're not broken. You're just tired. And that kind of tired doesn't get fixed with more coffee or better habits. It gets eased by being reminded of something we forget in our loneliest hours. You are not alone in this. Across the world, behind closed doors and polished smiles, others are carrying the same invisible weight, the same self-doubt, the same slow grief, the same silent battles no one else can see. Pain may isolate us, but truth reconnects us. And this is one truth that remains no matter what life is shouting at you. You're not weak for struggling. You're strong for staying. So before the world demands more from you today, give yourself this: a few minutes of breath, a reminder of your worth, a hand to hold, even if it's only through words. This isn't a lecture. This is a conversation with your spirit. And maybe, just maybe, it's the one you needed most. Some battles are loud: diagnoses, layoffs, divorces. But others unfold quietly, behind closed doors, in the spaces where no applause will come. The kind of pain that doesn't make headlines but chips away at a person's will day by day. Lena is 47 years old. She lives in Warsaw, Poland. Every morning at 4:45 a.m., she steps into the cold to begin her shift as a bus driver. She doesn't wear a suit. She doesn't have a social media following. She doesn't win awards. But Lena is raising a 12-year-old son with nonverbal autism by herself. Every day she works a 9-hour route, returns home, helps her son with sensory therapy, and falls asleep beside him by 9 p.m. most nights, only to do it all again the next day. Lena told a friend recently, "Sometimes I feel like I could disappear and no one would notice. I'm just background noise to the world." One snowy Tuesday morning, she pulled into her usual stop and opened the door. A man she'd never met before stepped on and paused. He looked at her and simply said, "I take your route every day. I've never said this, but thank you for being reliable. Thank you for showing up. I've been going through a hard time, and seeing your face at this stop, it means something to me." Lena cried when she got home that day. Not out of sadness, but because someone finally saw her. And being seen, truly seen, is one of the most healing things we can experience. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Those words, often attributed to Ian McLaren, are more than just a quote. They are a lens through which we begin to understand that even the people who seem fine may be hanging by a thread. The struggle to hold it all together in silence is real. You go to work with a smile even though your heart is breaking. You answer emails while managing grief, caretaking, loneliness, fear. And no one may ever clap for it. No one may even know. But just because it's unseen doesn't mean it's insignificant. It is, in fact, sacred. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is show up. Brené Brown wrote that in Daring Greatly, and it couldn't be truer. Showing up while you're hurting is not weakness. It's courage of the highest form. You may not feel strong, but strength is not about feeling. It's about staying. And you've stayed. Even when you didn't want to. Even when no one noticed. Even when you questioned if you mattered. So let's say this out loud. You matter. Your presence matters. And the world is better, quieter maybe, but better because you are still here. Let's also talk about the exhaustion that comes from being the strong one for too long. Maybe you're the one everyone leans on. Maybe you solve the problems, hold the family together, cover the bills, answer the late night phone calls. And maybe no one ever asks if you are okay. That's not fair. But you're not broken for being tired. You're human. And even warriors need rest. Take a breath. Inhale deeply. Exhale slowly. You don't have to fight every battle today, just this moment. That's enough. What we achieve inwardly will change outer reality. That quote comes from the Greek philosopher Plutarch, and it reminds us that transformation starts not with circumstances, but with inner strength. The belief that we are worth showing up for even when no one sees it. So how do you keep going when your effort is invisible, when no medals are handed out? You do it by redefining what success means. Success isn't loud. It's not always glamorous. Sometimes success is simply not quitting. Sometimes success is getting out of bed when it would be easier not to. Replying to one email when your anxiety says ghost everything. Making breakfast for your kids even when your heart feels like lead. Praying even when your faith feels like a whisper. Holding back tears long enough to finish your shift. And yes, sometimes success is crying. Because tears mean you're still tender, still feeling, still open. Let me speak to your heart now. The part of you that wonders if all this effort is even worth it. It is. Every moment of integrity matters. Every silent sacrifice matters. Every time you stayed kind when you had every reason not to, that matters. Lena's story may not go viral, but to the man who thanked her, to her son who depends on her, to the dozens of passengers who step onto her bus every week, her life ripples out like warmth from a fire, and so does yours. You don't need to be famous to be significant. You don't need an audience to be impactful. Your quiet commitment to showing up again and again is changing someone's world, even if you don't see it yet. This morning, take one more brave step. Acknowledge yourself. Here's a small but powerful practice to begin your day. Write one sentence that acknowledges how you actually feel, not how you're supposed to feel, not how you want others to think you feel, but the truth. Something like, today I feel scared, but I'm still going. I'm grieving, but I'm here. I'm tired, but I'm not done. I feel unseen, but I refuse to disappear. Why does this matter? Because speaking truth to yourself breaks the shame of silence. It reminds you that your inner life deserves attention, not just your productivity, your output, or your obligations. And in doing so, you start to return to yourself. Let's not pretend life is easy. Let's not sugarcoat suffering. But let's also not forget this. You've survived every worst day so far, and that is no small miracle. So if you're listening to this and you feel like giving up, don't. Not today. Take one breath, one step, one honest sentence. You are not alone in this fog. Others are walking through it too, quietly, bravely, just like you. And eventually, just like the fog that lifts from the street as morning unfolds, your clarity will come. The light will return. And when it does, you'll see that every step you took, every unnoticed, uncelebrated, unfiltered moment was leading you forward all along. You're still here. And that's where healing begins.
Sometimes the quietest nights carry the loudest messages. When you feel like giving up, it's easy to believe that life has gone silent, that the world has turned its back, that hope has closed its doors, and all that remains is the sound of your own breathing in a room that feels too still. But what if you're not being ignored, only invited to listen differently? The darkness doesn't always mean the absence of light. Sometimes it just means the light is coming from a new direction. And that direction might be softer, stranger, more subtle than you expected. Let's talk about the ways life speaks, especially when we're not looking for it. Jonas is 22. He lives in Stockholm. A university student who once dreamed of becoming a robotics engineer, he was on a full scholarship, top of his class, until he failed his final year. Not because he wasn't smart, but because his father passed away suddenly, and grief hit him like a wave that refused to recede. He stopped attending lectures. He stopped talking to his friends. He slept through the day and wandered aimlessly through the streets at night. He couldn't answer calls from his mother, and he wouldn't open his email. The shame was too much, the pressure too high, the silence in his own mind too loud. One night in November, he was walking through Gamla Stan, the old part of the city, where cobbled streets echo footsteps like ancient whispers. The air was freezing, his coat too thin. He was on his way to nowhere in particular when he heard it. Soft music floating through the alleyways. It was a violin. Someone was playing Brahms' Lullaby, the very tune his dad used to hum when Jonas was a child and couldn't sleep. The same melody he hadn't heard in over a decade. He turned a corner, and there she was, an old woman with wild silver hair and gloved fingers, bowing her violin beneath a flickering street lamp. Jonas didn't cry right away. He stood there frozen, listening, remembering, feeling. Then he sat down on the curb and wept. When the song ended, he didn't say a word. He didn't have to. She gave him a small nod and kept playing. And something cracked open in him. Not brokenness, something softer. Surrender. That same night, he messaged his brother. "Can we talk?" He didn't explain everything. He didn't have to. But that one note, one song in the dark, was enough to turn him toward the light again. Sometimes the universe whispers when you expect it to scream. Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. Desmond Tutu hope doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it slips into your life through a stranger's smile, a random lyric, a child's laughter, or a sunrise that feels like it was painted just for you. When you are deep in despair, your instinct might be to shut down, to close your heart as a defense mechanism. But healing requires receptivity, openness, the willingness to believe, just for one more minute, that something good might still find you. When you are going through hell, keep going. Winston Churchill. There's something powerfully practical in those words. Keep going, even when nothing makes sense, even when your prayers feel unanswered, even when you're crawling. Keep going, not because you feel strong, but because motion is proof that hope isn't dead. That violinist didn't know Jonas's story. She wasn't playing for him. And yet, she was. Life is often speaking to us through others who don't even know they're delivering a message. You are not forgotten, you are not forsaken, and you are not beyond reaching. Albert Einstein once said, "Coincidences are God's way of remaining anonymous." The right moment, the right person, the unexpected memory, the song on the radio when you needed it most. That quote in the book you almost didn't read, that video you clicked at 2 a.m. and didn't know why. These are not accidents. These are whispers, clues, compass needles in the fog. But you have to be willing to listen. You have to stop drowning out the world with noise, because healing often speaks in hushed tones. So how do we practice listening, especially when we're emotionally drained? Here's a simple practice you can do each morning. Before you pick up your phone, pause for 1 minute. Just one. Sit still. Listen. Breathe. Pay attention to what you hear outside your window. The birds, the wind, the distant car engine. That might sound small, but it creates space. And in that space, something sacred returns. Your awareness. The more you practice silence, the more you begin to hear life again. Jonas told me that months after that night, he started carrying a notebook. Not to journal, but to write down what he called messages in the wild. Things people said around him, lines from poems, quotes on subway walls. He didn't always know what they meant, but he felt like they were meant for him. And that's the thing. When you're in a dark place, meaning often comes after the moment, not during. You may not realize until later that the stranger who held the door, the child who waved from a window, or the cashier who said, "You have a kind face," was a message, a moment of grace, a thread in your unraveling. Your job isn't to figure everything out today. Your job is to stay open to the signs. Even the smallest flicker of hope is worth paying attention to. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you allowed yourself to believe something beautiful might happen? Not something logical, not something deserved, just something kind, random, healing, unspeakably good. We often block our own blessings by assuming life is only mechanical, that it only responds to effort. But there's more to this journey than hard work. There's mystery, mercy, miracles. But we miss them if we're only looking down. So here's your micro habit for today. Look up, literally. Look up at the sky, the ceiling, a tree, a bird flying overhead. Look up from your phone. Look up from your doubt. Let your posture reflect what your spirit needs. Elevation. Because even in the dark, there are stars. Even in your lowest point, something may be trying to reach you. And you don't need to know what it is yet. You just need to not shut the door. You may feel broken, but you are still capable of receiving love, kindness, grace. Jonas didn't rebuild his life overnight. It took therapy, time, reconnection with his family, and slowly returning to his studies. But what changed everything was not a lecture or a therapist's advice. It was a woman with a violin playing a lullaby he hadn't asked for, at a time when he thought no one remembered him. Life remembers you. You may feel forgotten, but you're not. If you're listening to this now, maybe you were meant to. Maybe this is your message in the dark. You are still needed. You are still part of the rhythm. And even if all you do today is listen to one good song, take one deep breath, or send one message to someone you love, that's enough. You don't need to leap. You just need to lean toward the light. Keep your eyes open. Keep your heart cracked, even slightly. Keep your ears attuned to the ways life is still speaking, even when words fail. Because words are not the only language of hope. There's music, memory, touch, breath, light. Jonas didn't expect to be saved. He expected to drift. But life had other plans, not through a dramatic moment, but through an ordinary one made extraordinary by timing. And maybe that's what this moment is for you. Maybe it's your turning point. Maybe your heart, right now, is recognizing something true, something it forgot to believe. You are not alone. The world hasn't given up on you, and deep down, neither have you. The fog might still be here, but there's a violin playing in the distance. Don't walk past it. Stop. Listen. Let the message reach you.
Borrow someone else's strength until you find your own. There are days when you run on courage, and then there are days when you run out. Not because you're weak, but because you've been strong for too long. You've carried your responsibilities, your grief, your doubt, your effort, your silence, and your longing. And at some point, the weight makes even the most resilient soul say, "I can't do this anymore." Here's something you need to know. You don't have to. Not alone. There's an old phrase in recovery communities, "I can't, we can." And those 4 words may be the most life-saving truth someone hears when they're on the edge. You were not made to carry every burden by yourself. You are not expected to figure it all out alone. And when your legs give out, when your voice shakes, when your hope flickers like a candle in the wind, you are allowed to lean on someone else. David is 35. He lives in Atlanta. He works at a mechanic shop by day and leads a small men's recovery group on Thursday nights. But rewind a decade, and David was in a very different place. He was deep into addiction, alcohol, then pills, then whatever he could get. After a car accident at 23 and a failed back surgery, the physical pain drove him to dependency, and dependency eventually stole everything. His job, his apartment, his friends. His mom stopped answering the phone. David found help through a rehab facility in Savannah. He started the 12-step process. He found a sponsor, Carl, a Vietnam vet in his 60s who had 25 years of sobriety behind him. And when David relapsed after 9 months, it was Carl who showed up at his apartment, sat beside him in silence, and said, "You don't have to be perfect to be worth saving." That moment broke something inside David and rebuilt something too. We often wait until we clean up to ask for help. We think we have to be polished to be loved. But the truth is, the ones who love us best don't wait for us to shine. They step into our shadows and sit with us there. No one is useless in this world who lightens the burdens of another. Charles Dickens. Sometimes the strength you need to keep going isn't found inside you yet. It's found in the hands, the voice, or the presence of someone who remembers what it's like to be where you are. And that's okay. You don't fail by leaning. You heal by connecting. David didn't get sober because he was superhuman. He got sober because another human refused to let him drown. Because someone showed up, not with judgment, but with patience. And years later, when a 22-year-old named Theo called him from a gas station bathroom, crying and high, David picked up. He drove 45 minutes to sit with him. He told Theo what Carl told him, "You don't have to be perfect to be worth saving." And the strength passed on. That's how healing moves through us. It's not about being the strongest. It's about being present enough to lend your strength to someone else and receiving theirs when your own runs out. Let me say something to you that maybe no one said lately. You are not a burden. Read that again. You are not a burden. You are allowed to be messy, confused, struggling, uncertain, and still be worthy of love, of support, of someone sitting beside you saying, "I've got you. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on." Bill Withers, "Lean on Me." Those lyrics were never meant to be just a song. They're an invitation, and maybe right now, they're the reminder your heart needs. So how do you borrow someone else's strength? You start by doing the hardest thing, asking. Asking doesn't mean demanding. It doesn't mean falling apart in front of everyone. It can be quiet, simple, a text, a whisper, a sentence. "Can I talk to you? I'm not doing well. Can you just sit with me?" I don't need advice. I just need presence. You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to impress anyone. You just have to open the door wide enough for someone to step in. We live in a culture that idolizes independence. But healing often happens through interdependence, through shared humanity, through stories that echo our own pain. I can do things you cannot. You can do things I cannot. Together, we can do great things. Mother Teresa, you don't need to be a hero today. You need to remember that heroes are carried too. Even the strongest people you admire, your mentors, your parents, your leaders, have all leaned at some point. No one climbs out of the pit without a hand. Borrowing strength might look like letting someone cook you a meal, saying yes when a friend offers to help, attending a support group even though it scares you, sending a voice message instead of pretending you're fine, allowing someone to see you truly without the mask. There's bravery in saying, I don't have it together. There's courage in saying, I need help. There's strength in collapsing into someone's arms and saying, just hold me. You're not weak for needing that. You're alive. In the darkest times, we don't need solutions as much as we need solidarity. David still struggles some days. He still has chronic back pain, but he also has a tribe. A group of men who show up on Thursdays, who cry and laugh and share the truth. And he says that what keeps him sober isn't just his willpower. It's that he refuses to walk alone. You don't have to join a recovery group to understand this. You just have to believe this truth. There is someone who would be honored to stand with you. You might not have found them yet, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. And if you already have someone like that, don't take them for granted. Send them a message today. Tell them you appreciate their presence. Even that tiny act of gratitude strengthens your connection and reminds you you're not navigating life in isolation. Here's a micro habit you can add to your mornings. Text one person, just one, not to ask for anything, but to reconnect. Thinking of you, just wanted to say I'm here. That's it. Sometimes we build the bridges before we need to cross them. Because here's what we often forget. One day, you will be the strength someone else borrows. You'll be the story they reference. You'll be the voice that pulls someone back from the edge. But to become that, you first have to receive what you need. Strength is not a constant state. It's a rhythm, a passing of the torch. Carl gave David strength. David gave Theo strength. Theo now leads a support group in North Carolina. And the torch continues. So if you're in a moment right now where you feel like quitting, pause. Think of the people who would lend you their strength if you gave them the chance. And if you feel like you have no one, let me be the first to say, I'm standing with you right now. Even across this screen, even in the quiet. Even if we never meet, you are not meant to carry this pain forever. Let someone carry you for a while. It's not surrender, it's healing. And healing is not something you do to yourself. It's something you do with others. The light you're searching for may not be within reach just yet. So take someone's hand. Let their light guide you until yours returns.
What hurts now might one day heal someone else. Pain has a strange way of echoing. In the moment, it feels like the end, like something is closed off inside you that might never reopen. You sit with it, aching and tired, wondering why life brought you here, and whether there's anything beyond this point except numbness. But here's something that might surprise you. The very wound that nearly broke you might one day be the reason someone else doesn't fall apart. It's not a comforting thought when you're still bleeding. In fact, it can feel insulting. The idea that your suffering could serve any purpose when all you want is for it to stop feels far too big, too distant. But time has a quiet way of unfolding what we couldn't see from the pit. Aria never thought she'd laugh again. She was 28, living in Beirut, building a fashion brand from scratch with her fiancé, Karim. He was her business partner, her best friend, her compass. When the explosion hit the port of Beirut in 2020, they had just wrapped a client meeting in a downtown cafe. She stepped outside to take a phone call. He stayed behind to finish the bill. 20 seconds later, the windows shattered. 10 seconds after that, the building collapsed. The hours after were chaos. The days were worse. Weeks passed in silence, not just around her, but inside her. Aria moved in with her sister and didn't speak for nearly a month. She couldn't bear to hear her own voice, as if forming words would make the loss more real. People told her to be strong. They told her he would want her to go on. None of that helped. What helped was smaller, slower. Her niece slipping a handmade bracelet onto her wrist. Her old mentor dropping off warm food without saying a word. A neighbor she barely knew leaving jasmine flowers by her door every morning for 3 weeks. And then, on one quiet afternoon, someone messaged her on Instagram. A stranger, a woman in Tunisia who had followed Aria's work for years. She said her husband had passed recently, and she remembered seeing Aria's posts. The sudden silence, and somehow it had made her feel less alone. I just wanted to say, the way you carry your grief is helping me carry mine. That one message didn't erase Aria's pain, but it cracked open a new room inside her, a place where pain and purpose didn't have to cancel each other out. The wound is the place where the light enters you. That line from the poet Rumi sounds beautiful on paper, but to those who have suffered deeply, it's not just poetry, it's survival. The places in us that were torn open by grief, betrayal, loss, those same places can one day become passageways. Doorways for light, for understanding, for the kind of compassion that doesn't come from theory, but from lived experience. Aria didn't go back to fashion. Instead, she began writing. At first privately, reflections, letters to Karim, memories she didn't want to lose. Then gradually, publicly, little blog posts, messages to people who had been through similar tragedies. Eventually, she trained as a trauma coach. Today, she runs a small practice helping others work through grief, not by fixing them, but by walking beside them through the dark. She says she doesn't teach from books, she teaches from scar tissue. When people tell her, "You're so strong," she always replies the same way. "No, I'm still tender. That's where the healing is." Turn your wounds into wisdom. Oprah said that, and it's a hard-earned wisdom. Because before you can use your pain to help others, you have to stop being afraid of it yourself. That doesn't mean forcing yourself to find meaning right away. It doesn't mean wrapping your pain in a bow and calling it a blessing. Sometimes pain is just pain. Sometimes loss doesn't make sense. But in time, if you let it, it can transform. Not into something you enjoy, but into something you honor. There is a quiet courage in saying, "This happened to me, and I'm still here." And if you're listening to this right now, maybe you're in the middle of something that doesn't feel survivable. Maybe you wake up with a heaviness you can't name. Maybe you carry the memory of something you never speak about. That's okay. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to justify your pain to anyone. But what you can do when you're ready is let it teach you how to be gentler, softer, more aware of what others might be carrying in silence. Pain changes us, but not always in the way we fear. Sometimes it makes us more human, more capable of love, less impressed by status and more moved by sincerity. There's a strange kind of strength that comes from being broken and choosing to build again. Not the same structure, but something more real, something that understands fragility without collapsing from it. Khalil Gibran wrote, "Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars." You don't have to be fearless to be strong. You just have to keep going in your truth, even when it feels lonely, even when no one claps for your progress. Arya says that for a long time, she thought helping others meant she had to be healed. But now she knows. Helping others is part of how we heal. The moment she held space for someone else's grief, hers didn't feel so monstrous anymore. It felt like something she could live with, not erase, not escape, but live with. And maybe that's what we're all learning to do. To live with our losses in a way that makes room for love again. Not the same love, but new love, gentler, slower, more sacred. So here's something you can try, not as a project, but as a practice. In the morning, take a few quiet minutes and ask yourself, what have I learned from my pain that someone else might need to hear? Maybe you won't share it today. Maybe you'll never speak it aloud. But the act of identifying that truth reminds you that what you've endured hasn't been wasted. There is someone out there, maybe across the world, maybe right next door, who needs what you've survived. Let that be your reason to keep walking, because it's not just about you. It never was. Your story, your scars, your rise, they're not just yours. They belong to every silent struggler who needs proof that the road doesn't end where the pain begins. You are living proof. And if today hurts, let it hurt. Sit with it. Don't rush past it. But also, hold this thought in the same hand. Someday, this ache might help someone else breathe easier. You may not be able to see it yet, but you're already becoming the person who will one day say, I know that pain, and I'm still standing. And those words, they'll matter more than you can imagine. Keep walking, even if it's just one step today. We tend to imagine breakthroughs as these big, cinematic moments, people leaping from rock bottom into greatness, standing on stages, yelling with conviction, smiling with sparkles in their eyes. But most real breakthroughs, they don't look like that. They look like dragging yourself out of bed even though your body wants to stay curled up in the dark. They look like washing your face when you've been crying for 3 days. They look like texting someone even when your pride is begging you to isolate. They look like doing the bare minimum and letting that be enough. Progress is rarely loud. Most of the time, it whispers. And healing, contrary to what motivational posters might say, isn't about running toward the light. It's about crawling forward when everything inside you says, why bother? Marcello is 62. He lives just outside Lisbon, in a quiet fishing village where the pace of life is slow and the wind smells like salt and history. He served in the Portuguese Navy for over 30 years, a disciplined man. Woke at the same hour every morning, rain or shine. Walked the shoreline before breakfast, had a laugh like gravel and eyes that always looked like they were remembering something. When he suffered a stroke at 59, everything changed. He lost mobility on his left side. Doctors told him he might not walk again. They weren't cruel about it. They were honest. Marcello didn't cry. He just nodded. Then when they left the room, he stared out the window and whispered, "Not yet." Rehabilitation was brutal. His body didn't cooperate the way it used to. His hands trembled. His speech slurred. But every morning, Marcello asked the nurse to wheel him into the garden. "Let me feel the air," he'd say. And there, beneath the orange trees and the stone archways, he talked to his body, not with anger, with patience. The first time he took a step, just one, it took everything he had. He didn't shout, he didn't cry. He just looked up at the sky and smiled. One step, one. And that was enough for that day. Now, years later, Marcello walks those same garden paths every morning, slowly, deliberately. His grandson walks beside him, holding his hand sometimes, even when Marcello doesn't need the support anymore. They've started hiking coastal trails together, nothing too difficult. Just enough to feel the sea breeze and remember that life doesn't end when pain begins. It changes, yes, but it doesn't have to end. It does not matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop. That wisdom from Confucius has been passed down for centuries, and it remains one of the truest things we can hold on to when life feels impossibly heavy. You don't need to run today. You don't need to conquer the mountain. You just need to keep walking, even if it's one trembling, hesitant, imperfect step. Fall 7 times. Stand up 8. That's a Japanese proverb that many of us quote, but few truly understand until we've actually fallen that 7th time and thought, I have nothing left. But you do, because here you are, listening, breathing, trying. That's not nothing. That's resilience. We've been taught to measure progress in miles, but real progress, it often happens in inches. A little more breath than yesterday, a little more courage to reach out, a little more sleep, a little less shame. And let's not forget, sometimes progress means staying in bed longer because your body needs rest. Sometimes it's saying no. Sometimes it's crying in the shower. Sometimes it's not quitting your job or leaving the relationship or starting something new, but simply enduring one more day with your soul intact. That counts. That matters. That's enough. Success is the sum of small efforts, repeated day in and day out. Robert Collier. Read that again. Small efforts, repeated, day in, day out. Not perfection, not massive achievements, just quiet consistency. Marcello didn't recover because he made a dramatic comeback. He recovered because every morning he greeted the day with willingness. He showed up for his body. He thanked his legs for trying. He didn't curse the slowness, he honored it. And in that patience, healing found its way back to him. So here's what I want to ask you this morning, gently but firmly. What is one thing you can do today that will keep you moving forward? Not 10 things, not everything, just one. Maybe it's brushing your teeth while playing a song that lifts you. Maybe it's stepping outside for 3 minutes to breathe air that doesn't taste like your own sadness. Maybe it's organizing one corner of the room. Maybe it's drinking a glass of water with both hands and whispering, I'm still here. Whatever that thing is, do it with reverence. Let it be your way of saying to the world, I'm not done. Even if the world isn't watching, even if no one claps, even if it feels small, it matters. If you felt stuck for a long time, if it's been months or even years since you felt momentum, I want you to know something. Stillness doesn't mean failure. Sometimes it means survival. And survival is a sacred kind of success. Give yourself permission to move slowly, to wobble, to doubt. But don't let that stop you from moving at all. There's still life in you. There's still music, still stories to tell, still mornings that will surprise you with softness. Marcello says his favorite sound these days isn't the ocean. It's his grandson's laughter echoing off the cliffs. He didn't plan for that sound. He didn't even know to hope for it. But it came. And he heard it because he kept walking. You'll hear something beautiful too. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. Because you didn't give up, you'll reach a moment that feels like light, soft, warm, earned. And when you do, you'll look back and see how far you came. One breath, one step, one quiet act of faith at a time. Conclusion, you're still here. That's where the miracle begins. Maybe you don't feel strong, that's okay. Maybe you don't feel brave, that's okay too. But if you're listening to this, if you've made it to the end of this message, then you've already proven something to yourself that no one else can give you. You're still here. You're still choosing to keep your heart open. You're still searching for meaning, for comfort, for clarity, even if you feel like you're stumbling through the fog. And in a world that so often rewards speed, hustle, and surface-level strength, your quiet persistence is revolutionary. Let me say this as clearly as I can. You are not alone. You never were. The pain you carry is real, but so is the hope that refuses to leave you. The fear is real, but so is your breath, your heartbeat, your capacity to love and be loved. The darkness is real, but the light, it still rises every morning, even when you don't see it right away. So if today all you can do is keep walking, do that. Even slowly, even with tears, even with doubts, keep walking. Because somewhere ahead is a moment your future self will be grateful you didn't miss. Somewhere ahead is someone who will look at you and say, because you didn't give up, I didn't either. Your existence is not an accident. Even your quietest breath belongs to the rhythm of the world.